Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the Star Wars universe comes one of the most anticipated sequels of all time, featuring a band of brave heroes led by a young scavenger who trains under the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy while the forces of good and evil go to war once again. We're talking about The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi was written and directed by Rian Johnson and was released in the United States on December 15, 2017. It was distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. The Last Jedi is the sequel to 2015's The Force Awakens and is the 8th episode of the 9-part Skywalker saga. The film is the continuation of the story between the evil First Order and the heroic Resistance and centers heavily on Rey, the Force-sensitive orphan from The Force Awakens. Rey has found the missing Luke Skywalker, whom she tries to convince to train her to become a Jedi. Though Luke initially refuses to help her, he eventually agrees, despite his past with Ben Solo, who rejected his teachings and became Kylo Ren. Even as Rey grows stronger in the Force, her friends in the Resistance find themselves outnumbered in an intergalactic stalemate. General Leia Organa, Poe Dameron, Finn, and the saga's latest character Rose Tico must find a way to fight back against the First Order. Kylo Ren's fascination with Rey continues in the film as the two connect through the Force as Ren attempts to lure Rey to the dark side. After the Resistance manages to overcome the stalemate, the final battle of the film pits Luke against Kylo in an epic showdown as the heroes attempt their escape despite great sacrifice from one of their own. The Last Jedi received rave reviews from critics and broke box office records with a worldwide total of $1.3 billion on a budget of $200 to $317 million. It had the 8th biggest opening of all time and was the 3rd Star Wars film to break the $1 billion mark. Thanks to the ensemble cast, the action-packed story, and iconic characters, The Last Jedi continues to be one of the most talked about and most popular Star Wars films of all time. And that's the lowdown on The Last Jedi. Sequels are a big thing in Hollywood. I don't think you have to be an avid moviegoer to understand that concept. It's been happening for quite some time. At this point, we expect it. Funny to imagine there was a time in this country, in this world, when it comes to entertainment, that the idea of a sequel wasn't even a thing. How many times did a great movie or did a very popular movie get followed up with anything other than just another movie? And here's what we're going to do in this movie. As far as the idea of sequels, blockbusters, that kind of thing, the concept's really not that old, kids, if you really think about it. But these days, it's hard to go to a theater to see a movie, even if you don't know, okay, is there a story beyond this? Even if you don't know if there is or not, chances are there's going to be a conversation with somebody at some point. Hey, have you seen so-and-so that just came out? Oh, yeah, I haven't seen it yet. How is it? It's pretty good. Man, they left the door wide open for a part 2. And we hear that kind of stuff. I've said that plenty of times. And it's almost like, why can't we just enjoy the film? Why can't we just, we're looking for a part 2. Hey, maybe this could be a trilogy. What? I don't know. And you know what's funny, man, is a lot of times that ends up being 100% the case. So when it comes to sequels, part 2 is a big deal, right? In the world of Star Wars, part 2 at one time was just one film, and that was The Empire Strikes Back. Highly regarded, I would think to this day, as one of the best sequels maybe of all time. To me it is. I think Empire is the best of the original trilogy, in my humble opinion. So when we talk about part 2 to the sequels to the original trilogy, the sequel to The Force Awakens is The Last Jedi. Now, if I sit here and say The Last Jedi was a superior film to The Force Awakens, that's probably going to cause a whole bunch of you to get all kinds of upset. Because, man, this movie has some haters. And we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about the good stuff and maybe the not so good stuff. But when we did the Force Awakens episode, Phil, I think we had just went off mic and we're done. And we just kept talking about it. And then Jedi came up and we were talking about, hey, it's not as bad as people think, that kind of thing. It's like, dude, let's just do the whole trilogy here. Let's do the whole sequels, which is what we're doing. So as we kick this thing off, does The Last Jedi deserve all the insane amounts of crap it gets from the public at large and from the Star Wars fan base online?
No. No, I don't think that it does. I actually enjoyed Last Jedi a lot more than I have seen people enjoy it online. Um, I personally think that it's the best out of the sequel trilogy.
Hmm. That's a big statement, man, because you got, we covered The Force Awakens. We're going to cover The Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker's got its own set of issues, kids. We'll get there eventually. Um, this movie, Phil, to be a Star Wars flick, it's obviously a Star Wars flick. The music's there, the lightsabers are there, the themes are there, the families are there. There's some Skywalkers bouncing around in this movie, obviously. There's some X-Wings and droids and all the fun stuff that we've come to know and love from this universe. But this movie, for me, feels a little disconnected from The Force Awakens. And we know that that's probably because of one guy, the director, Rian Johnson. Man, to be a fly on the wall in the early stages of planning this movie, it makes me wonder, what were the conversations? What did they sound like? Was it, hey, look, I'm taking this thing and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and we're going to put it on its head and we're just going to run with it? Or was it, did he think he was following exactly what should have happened? What's your take on that? Do you think the idea was to just do a 180 from The Force Awakens, or do you think this somehow plays into what we saw with the other film?
Uh, I think that it is a I think that is an odd choice to begin with. To come in and restart a franchise and not have one person as the sole vision for the entire franchise.
Mm,
I think when you are coming in and you've got a guy like JJ who is gonna do things his way, and then bring in someone like Johnson who wants to do things his own way, you're gonna have a clash of opinions, and it clearly doesn't seem like they were on the same page making these two movies.
mm. It's kind of a Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder thing, kind of feels like, to some degree. Um, what was Abrams' reason for not doing this one? Do we know why he didn't do this film? Was there a reason behind it?
I don't know that there was. I think that that was just always the schedule that he was gonna do the first one,
Mm,
and then Rian Johnson was gonna come in and do the second one. Um,
wow.
I don't know.
Well, I'm not trying to bury this thing right out the gate, but it does feel a little disjointed. And a lot of the things that we talked about in the Force Awakens episode uh, have to do with Finn and how it seemed like his arc was, man, this guy was going to become something big, a major player. So I'll hit you with this right before we, dive deep into this thing. In your opinion, were you, encouraged by what we saw from Finn early on in this film, and did it maintain or did it lose its way in this movie for you?
I think the stuff early on in the movie when they reintroduced him and he's in the pod, and he's in that whatever that suit is with like the liquid leaking out of it.
Yeah.
I think that stuff was fine, but I feel like his subplot with um with Poe and Rose was some of the weakest stuff of the entire movie.
Hmm.
And that's not a
Yeah.
knock on those characters, but like especially Rose, I think Rose gets a lot of undue hate. But I think she's a good character. But I just think that little side quest they put them on just felt so inconsequential to the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, because it didn't really seem to do anything. It didn't really accomplish well. They got the master code breaker, which it's funny because every time they said the words master code breaker, it reminded me of master prank caller from regular show. I couldn't help it. I kept expecting the big 80s cell phone guy with legs to show up. The master prank caller. Oh, it's a mess. We'll get there. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. It did feel inconsequential to the rest of the film. And plus, I really wanted to know what the original Master Codebreaker's gimmick is, because man, he kind of looked pretty cool at the dice table there. So I don't know if we'll ever see him again at some point down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like someone too. I don't know that he was somebody as an actor I know, but he kind of favors Jason Lee to some degree, and I think he looks like somebody else too. But there could be a whole other story there. Who knows? Speaking of the cast, we've already touched on some. We've got what used to be the Holy Trinity of the Star Wars universe. As we know, kids, spoiler alert, Han's no longer with us. Emo Kylo, Emo Ren took him down in The Force Awakens. I know that's an overused word for this character, but the way they play him, it kind of fits. But we do have Mark Hamill back as Luke Skywalker, Carrie Fisher as General Organa, General Leia, not Princess. We also have Adam Driver back as Kylo Ren, of course. Daisy Ridley is back as Rey. As we said, Finn, John Boyega is back. Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron. Andy Serkis, we get to see full-fledged CG Supreme Leader Snoke. And man, I got some thoughts on that. Domhnall Gleeson is back as General Hux. I love Hux. Give this guy a spin-off series, I'm telling you. I'd be so entertained because he's so great. Anthony Daniels is back, and the droids R2 and 3PO are both back. Captain Phasma makes an appearance in this one. But as Phil pointed out here, Rose Tico is a new member of the universe here, played by Kelly Marie Tran. And also Benicio del Toro, who is crossing universes because he's already in the Marvel universe, as we know, as the Collector. He's here as DJ, an underworld codebreaker. And also Laura Dern, making her Star Wars debut as Vice Admiral Emmeline Holdo. So lots of stuff to dig through here. What do you think about this cast, and what do you think about the new entries to this to the Star Wars universe here?
I again, I think Rose was an interesting character. I don't necessarily like what they did with her throughout this entire movie, and then just completely dropping her character arc altogether. Next movie was even worse. I did like Vice Admiral Holdo. I thought she was a great addition to the cast. Del Toro is such a good actor, and he was just so wasted here in those scenes that he was in. I didn't really get his need to be in the movie. Well, yes, I do. I understood what they were trying to do, but it just didn't really work.
It kind of felt like anybody could have played this part.
Yeah.
I like the fact they gave him a stutter, and I like the fact that they're trying to make him a character. I hate that he went heel in the end. That kind of sucked. I was hoping it was like a double cross, like a triple cross, and he was going to cross the First Order up at the end, but he didn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts on it. I'm sure we'll get there with like his whole character arc and what they were trying to do and why I think it didn't work.
Yeah. So from the opening crawl of this film, and I haven't watched this thing in a long, long time, but in prep for this show, the opening crawl, I had to go back and reread it like 3 times. The first thing out the gate is the First Order reigns. And I'm thinking, okay, there's no mention of the Resistance having destroyed Starkiller Base. There's no mention of the First Order being pushed back on their heels. There's none of that. It is the First Order reigns. And I'm thinking, huh? Did you catch that? Like, I kind of expected them to sort of start off on the defensive in this film instead of the offensive again, as they were in The Force Awakens. Is that odd that it's almost like they don't even miss Starkiller Base at this point?
No, they're still somehow winning, even though they lost their greatest weapon.
A massive weapon. Massive. And man, the resources the First Order has. My God, dreadnoughts. Holy. Dude, this thing's like a Star Destroyer on steroids, man, which is an old joke, but very appropriate. Um, Insane. I mean, you got to give it up to the visual effects guys. These models, I don't know if they're still using the old school models that Lucasfilm used on the original trilogy. I would hope so. Hopefully, not every ship is CG, but man, the dreadnoughts look freaking amazing. I mean, when that thing came out of light speed and it was whoosh, it's just right there. Holy crap, man. That thing is awesome.
Yeah. Um, I will say I really enjoy the first 15 minutes or so of the movie. All of the
Yeah.
stuff in that dogfight is just so good. The the stuff with the bombers and the tension around that scene where the last bomber gets through and she's trying to activate the bomb. I think all of that stuff was filmed really, really well.
Yeah.
And there's just such great tension around those scenes all the way to the end. I just love how they executed that.
That was great. You're right. It does start off awesome. What a way to kick the film off. And I had a comment to make about Poe's comedy in The Force Awakens, how I felt like him coming face to face with Ren, he should have been a little bit more intimidated, and he wasn't at all. And I thought that was kind of out of place. On the flip side of that, I think when this film kicks off and he's in the X-Wing and he's trying to reach Hux on the intercom and he's playing like he can't, like he doesn't hear him, and he's all right, I'll hold. And he does it like 3 times to him. And Hux is like, can he hear me? It's so good. I don't know why this comedy works for me so much better in the opening spot here, but
I
it kind of feels like because he's at arm's length maybe, and he's being a wise ass versus being up close in person. Maybe that's why it works, but I loved it.
I think it's because he was intentionally trying to be a distraction, and you kind of understood what the plan was. And then on top of that, I think it's just the way that Hux, just completely no sold it at first, and
Yes,
then it just makes it even funnier because he's like, "Wait a minute, can he really not hear me?"
right.
It makes it even funnier.
And he's got that look when he's looking off to his left, and then he looks back forward to the bridge, and he makes a face like he smells something bad. Dude, that cracked me up when I had to go back and watch that 2 or 3 times. It was awesome. Gleason doesn't get enough credit, man. People talk a lot about Driver, and they should because he's awesome, but Gleason does not get enough credit, in my opinion, as Hux. I thought he really came to life in this movie. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
So
there are a few scenes that Hux was in that he just played it perfectly.
Poe says, look, I can't hold forever. Tell him Leia has an urgent message for him. And then his guy's like, I think he's tooling with you, sir. And as soon as he said that, you hear Poe say about his mother. And it's just real deadpan. And they're like, oh, crap, he's screwing with us. That was so good. So good. The idea, and there's something to be said for intergalactic warfare in the Star Wars universe, because when it's played realistically, it's not just a bunch of CG ships flying around. It's really cool stuff. The idea of Poe taking out the surface cannons on the dreadnought and Hux going, why aren't you blowing him out? He's like, we can't. He's too close. Like,
Yeah,
this thing is so big, it can't take fighters that close. Of course, they send the TIE fighters out. And then, as you said, it leads to the bombing run. Dude, it's kind of breathtaking to look up inside of those bombers and see the massive amounts of bombs they're going to drop on this thing. That was a very cool visual.
yeah. I thought that was great, and that's why I'm like, no, I can't say enough good things about this initial fight scene of the movie, or the dog fight. Just having one single X-wing go through there and take out all the cannons on its massive ship, it just looks so cool. And I mean, even when the swarm of TIE fighters comes out, um, it's just all of it. It's just executed so well. And just his plan of taking out all the cannons, and how they executed their plan, and was just, it's so smart that I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a great movie.
Yeah, yeah. It gave you hope, which is what this universe is all about, kids. Is hope. Key word here. Yeah, I'm with you. I was thinking, man, this is going to be pretty epic because it kind of felt like, again, for me personally, the comedy from Poe was on point. It was perfect in that moment. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Everything's clicking. the idea that Poe's turned off his comm and Leia's telling him, back off, let's go, we got what we wanted. And he's like, no, we're going to take down the dreadnought. And you're like, dude, Luke would never have done this ever, ever, ever. And, would Han have done this? I don't think Han would have done this. Han would have been like, as much as I'm a rebel in every sense of the word, we're putting people's lives at risk. And Poe totally did and got people killed, which is going to come back to bite him eventually. I thought it was funny that immediately after they took the dreadnought down and all hit light speed, that she's like, Supreme Leader Snoke is is here, wants to speak to you, and he's like, Hux has that look, great, good, okay, and then bam, he's right there, and he's like doing the force choke and stuff on him. Again, Phil, it's that weird Imperial / bad guy Empire stuff in this universe where it's these mystical Jedis teaming up with politicians, teaming up with the military. And it's such an odd combination, but they make it work. And you've got this ghostly old dude who's once again teaming up with this military onslaught that is the First Order. Did we know going into this film we were going to get a full head to toe Snoke? Did we see that in the previews? Because I'm having a hard time remembering if we did or not.
I don't remember.
I think it's good that we did. I don't know how I feel about how he looked, but it is what it is. So we go back to the planet here where the Jedi Temple is, and we see how the Force Awakens ended when she's trying to hand Luke the saber, and of course he takes it and throws it over his shoulder. So I'll say this about Mark Hamill in this movie: I thought Mark Hamill was great in this film. But I think that he was a great Mark Hamill. I don't think this was Luke Skywalker. It didn't feel like Luke. And not just because Phil, he wasn't like serious and not wisecracking and stuff. It's not because of that. It just, I don't know, another disconnect I have, or a major disconnect I have from The Force Awakens and what I envisioned this movie was going to be. Dude, to me, this didn't feel like Luke. What was your take on how they portrayed the character in this film?
I think that they did a great job in this movie of taking everybody's expectations and finding a way to twist them into something else. And I think that is a motif that goes out throughout the entire movie. And depending on how much you're attached to original canon, or how much you're attached to your expectations to this movie, is going to drive how much you enjoyed it. For me, I enjoyed the fact that they were willing to just go so far left with everything, because although I enjoyed Force Awakens, it's so fan servicey.
Yeah.
And so to come out of that and go, we're going to do something that is just completely new and different. I like that.
Was it too much veering to the left in this movie?
At times I can see where people felt like it was too much. I didn't hate the Luke stuff. I know some people are like, that's not the Luke I grew up with, but I don't think he's supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be a Luke that is essentially what we see of Obi in the first movie, where he's been through so much, and he's already saved the universe once. He's done all these other things, and he went through a situation where he felt like he failed a student, and he had to go away in exile, and come back and have this big heroic moment. I feel like that's his entire plot line throughout Last Jedi, and because of that, I liked it for what it is. I get people that are like, oh, this isn't Luke Skywalker, but I just don't think that it's supposed to be. I mean, if people were looking for him to be this big, hopeful Luke Skywalker, and now he's like a master and he can do all these incredible feats with the Force, they were always going to be disappointed.
Yeah. It's funny in A New Hope, Uncle Ben Uncle Ben. Who am I thinking of? Uncle
Uh,
Owen. Uncle Owen.
yeah.
I got my universes crossed there for a second, Phil. But Uncle Owen refers to Ben as a crazy old man. And your comparison is right, but it's kind of like this is what everyone thought the old crazy Ben Kenobi was on Tatooine was this guy. When the truth was, Sir Alec Guinness, he wasn't crazy at all. He was just a hermit who kept himself and no one knew much about him. But this is crazy old, Ben Kenobi. You're right. You're totally right because he's haunted and he's been living alone for 32, 33 years, whatever it's been, like, or well, not quite that long in the continuity of things. Let's say 20 years, whatever it's
Yeah.
been, maybe 20. But yeah, he's been alone this whole time. And if you take it in that context and you say to me, well, look, this guy went through hell. He's been alone this whole time. Things upstairs are going to start, misfiring. And dude, he didn't know Han was dead. That to me said automatically. And it's funny. They didn't bother explaining until later in the film that he was no longer connected to the Force. He had let it go. Because, like, when that happened, I turned to whoever I was in the theater with and said, how did he not know? Did that throw you for a loop when Luke didn't know that Han was dead?
No. Um, I think because he had completely kind of taken his ball and went home, and he just
Yeah.
didn't want anything to do with anything. It kind of made sense.
It freaked me out. I thought they did a good job explaining it. And then when I understood, okay, he's disconnected himself. Because when he reconnects later, he feels Leia for the first time in years and knows that she's hurt. But the idea that he doesn't want anything more to do with it made sense when I heard the explanation. But it did throw me for a loop to begin with. The stuff with Snoke, okay, we talked about earlier, the full figured Snoke. How are you feeling about the full figured CGI Snoke? What's your thoughts on how he looked?
I thought the way he looked was fine. I did think that he looked very CG.
Yeah.
I do think that a lot of the visual stuff outside the original trilogy, it's very hit or miss because it all looks so perfect,
Yeah.
and it all looks in the prequels everything was super shiny, and this is like maybe everything isn't super shiny, but some of the stuff just looks artificial.
Yeah.
And I think Snoke is definitely, that same kind of look where I don't think that it's bad, but you can definitely look at him as like, this is CG. Like, dead ringer for CG.
This is Andy Serkis, as we all know. He's the, like we said in Force Awakens, he's the motion capture guy. He's very good at what he does. But I wonder if there's a world in which this could have just been a practical makeup job with prosthetics, and he's in the suit and everything. And is he too short? Is he? It's not what they wanted. They want this character to be tall and slender. What? Why wasn't this just prosthetics? I wonder.
I think Snoke in the movie is taller than Andy Serkis is.
Yeah.
So maybe you could have just got a taller guy and put prosthetics on him, and then just had Andy Serkis do the voice acting. I don't know.
It seems like the way to go. There's so many practical effects in the Star Wars universe that look really good, that hold up too. There's some stuff from the original trilogy. Some of it's hokey now, years later, it is, but a lot of it holds up really well. So, I mean, having Rick Baker on the payroll doing the makeup effects for the creatures is a pretty good job. I'm pretty sure Rick Baker did the makeup effects, but that helps, of course. So this scene in his, I don't know what they're calling it, in his chambers, I guess, or whatever, in his throne room, what have you. He's face to face with Kylo Ren and says he sees a new Vader. When he first met him, he said he saw a new Vader in Kylo, but he fears he was mistaken. And Kylo's like, I've given everything I have to you, to the dark side. And then Snoke says, take that ridiculous thing off. Which begs the question, why is this guy running around a mask unless it's for the sake of wanting to be his grandfather so bad he can't stand it? And it's almost like they ripped on the mask a couple of different times in this film. Then he eventually throws it away. But it's like, I don't know. It begs the question: why was he? Is that Johnson doing it? Maybe you think?
But see, I think that you have built him up as this guy that's compared to Vader
Yeah,
in every way, and I, I think Kylo's story arc throughout this movie is the best part of the movie.
yeah.
I think he, I think he makes a point of being his own man in this movie, and I think getting rid of the helmet that draws some comparisons to Vader. I think it's a part of that. I think it's a part of, doing away with those similarities and the fan service and going, no, this is just a new character with different motives and, different strengths and weaknesses.
And he says to him, "Killing Han split your soul. You were bested by a girl that had never held a lightsaber. You failed. As long as Skywalker lives, hope lives. You're no Vader. You're just a child in a mask." Boy, that'll burn you down. Uh, that of course causes a tantrum later, which he did in the Force Awakens also, like an overgrown man child. That part of this character I freaking love. The idea that he's trying to be something he's not. We saw it in The Force Awakens. We're seeing it in this movie. Doesn't matter how many people he kills, he's never going to be what he thinks he should be and what the big bads of the film think he should be either. He's never going to get there because it's not in him to do it. It's crazy how, I don't know, disillusioned. We talked a little bit last time about how strong the dark side of the Force is. And Yoda said many years ago now, it's never going to be stronger than the light side, but it is more tempting. It's more deceitful. It's an easy way out. And that's why it's easy to take. And it's very, like you lust after it. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Temptation, I guess, is it. But it can fool you, and that's what it's done to this kid. He thinks he can be this thing because it's told him he can. But dude, I finally see the conflicted Kylo Ren in this film that we didn't know was real in the first one because he flat out gutted his father with a lightsaber. I mean, like you said, he has the best story arc in this film, the character arc in this film, doesn't he?
I think that he does. I think that him trying so hard to leave his old life behind and be, what's expected of him and everything that has cost him and everything that he is attempting to do in it is just so compelling. I really believe that even like his scenes with Ray, um, all of their scenes where they have the mental link,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff is just so good. It's really just some of the other stuff around it that causes the movie to suffer, like the Finn side quest.
Yeah, yeah, Canto Blight, and we'll get there eventually. It's a yeah. So when we see Ray again with Luke, she's telling him that we need him, we need you for the Resistance, and he says this thing's still getting quoted. Phil, a bunch of this movie is. You think I'm going to walk out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order? What did you think was going to happen here? Did you think I just came to the most unfindable place in the galaxy for no reason at all? When he said laser sword, there's moments in films and TV shows and stuff that I'm really into, even in books. I was immediately taken out of this film. Not forever, but for that moment, I was like, laser sword. If that was meant to make me get out of this for a second and be very surreal, it worked. I mean, what's the purpose of the verbiage here? Like, it wouldn't have been hard to just say lightsaber. Is the point of this film that, oh, this old guy's so cynical that he won't even call it a lightsaber now? Is that what we're looking at?
um, I think it's that he's that cynical, and I think it's that the point the movie is trying to make is you guys are so married to all of the lore of this franchise. You're so
Mhm.
married to all of the things that you want this franchise to be, and you want to protect all of your childhood memories. And Luke is basically looking you in the mirror and saying, "Hey guys, it's not that serious."
Oh man, wow. But is that Luke or is that Ryan Johnson?
I feel like Luke is a I feel like Luke is a messenger for what the movie is trying to tell you. And like,
Yeah,
guys, it's not that serious.
yeah. I mean, when a property stand, dude, we talked about this with wrestlers in the past. When a guy steps outside of his character and gives you a wink and a nod, that could kill him. And it's like, how do you take that? Like, imagine something like this happening in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where suddenly the second movie just eh, not betrayed, but sort of tried to reverse and with a wink and a nod said, nah, no, it's not all that. I mean, how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where these people felt the need to do it? Is it because of the toxic fan base, or there's something else going on here?
Um, I believe it's partially because the first movie was what it was. The first movie is such a celebration of Star Wars and the
Mm-hmm.
franchise, which is redundant. The Star Wars is the franchise, but it's such a
Right.
celebration of the Star Wars franchise. That this movie is like, all right, that was to get you guys back in. Now let's go in this direction and do something different
Right.
because we've been doing all of that stuff. We've been doing this for decades now. You've got all of the comic books, you've got all of the novels and all of the spin-offs and stuff that you could possibly want. Let's do something different with this franchise.
I swear it almost feels like Vince McMahon taking his own product and saying, "Remember everything I made you care about yesterday and told you was important? None of it matters anymore." That's
Yeah.
what it feels like to me, dude. I'm not trying to be that middle-aged fanboy who's mad. I'm not mad about it. I get what they're doing. But it's almost like it felt like there was a better way to do it instead of we're going to take everything and turn it on its ear because we just freaking can. I don't know. I don't know. Like I don't know if at the end of the day the movie fulfilled on a such a great compelling story to warrant that, massive left turn in direction. I don't know. That's subjective.
And
Um
in pieces it did. And
yeah.
with the Kylo stuff, I think that it did. Even with some of the race stuff, I think that it did. Other stuff that it attempts to do it in, it doesn't. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, old man Luke didn't work for a lot of people. He's milking some aliens, which is all kinds of weird, and then drinks this stuff in front of her, which is another. Again, dude, it took me out of the moment because I'm trying to remember like this is an aged character. He's not going to be the same. I totally get it, but hoy, it just felt. I don't even know if it was there for a laugh. It was for whatever. Um, he tells Ray she's wasting her time, and man, she just follows him around, doesn't say a word, and she keeps saying, "I'm not leaving without you." And then when she starts to hear voices, she goes to the Jedi Temple, finds the text, and then this is where Luke starts to take this girl a little bit more seriously than he ever did before. And she says she's seen the place, she's seen the island, she's seen that place. And Luke says, "Who are you? Where are you from?" She says, "From nowhere." And he says, "No one's from nowhere." And she says, "I'm from Jakku." And he goes, "Okay, that's pretty much nowhere." That cracked me up. I did like that. So he saying, "Why are you here?" So she tells him, she goes, "No, no, why are you here?" This starts to feel like Luke to me, where it's like, forget all that other crap. I want to know about you. Tell me what you want. That starts to feel like an aged Jedi Master to me, where it's like, screw all this other stuff. What's in your heart? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? To me, for me, this is the first time these two connected. How important do you think it is for Hamill and for really to have this chemistry that they have in this film where they can connect? And do you think they have it to begin with?
Um, I think that they do. I think that it's just so different from the master and apprentice dynamic than we've ever seen in the franchise. Especially when you've got Luke as the master, it's just such a departure from any of that. But I think the scenes that they do have together, that they're good.
Yeah, it's just different. It's different. Maybe if we had seen movies in between Jedi and this one, which of course we didn't, because we didn't. They just left everything sitting still, obviously, and didn't attack it again until many, many years later with this. But we just take it for granted he was a Jedi master and he had students, and these students ended up, going rogue on him and forming the Knights of Ren and all this other stuff. But you're right, the dynamic between them is odd. So um, basically, he says, it's time for the Jedi to end, and he agrees to teach her. Which actually, he doesn't agree to teach her. He says, you need a teacher, but I won't teach you. It's time for this island to die. It's time for the Jedi end. He's convinced of it. We see the stuff back with Leia and Poe. Leia slaps him for what happens with the Dreadnought deal. He says there were heroes on this mission, and she says, yeah, dead heroes. You can't fix everything by jumping into an X-Wing and blowing stuff up. And then the First Order jumps in. They've tracked them through hyperspace, through light speed, which is crazy. And that's when Poe turns it back on her, says permission to jump into an X-Wing and blow some stuff up. She says permission granted. I think the dynamic between Poe and Leia is one that I wanted to see explored just a little bit more, but I love these two together on camera. It very much felt like Han, not a romantic thing, but just the kind of stuff that she hated about Han when she first met him. But yet she knows that Poe's very good and is very brave and is relentless and wants to help win this war. But man, I thought when they were together on camera, they looked great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff with Poe is also interesting. I think his need to take down the dreadnought, and he didn't understand what it cost them because there were people in those ships that lost their lives to do that. And he's just like, but we did it. And Leia's looking around like, but we've lost a lot. We lost ships and we lost men to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that he's looking at it like, it's chess. You're gonna lose pieces on the board, but it's a very desensitized way to look at it.
Yeah. Very valuable pieces, and resources are very finite for this resistance for sure. Um, so, okay. Something that we're going to get to here is the Princess Leia slash General Leia stuff, where her ship gets blown up. Kylo has her in his sights. He won't pull the trigger, which is really maybe our first indication, Phil. This guy might be turning face after all at some point. He could have took her out of space, but he chose not to. Did you expect him to do it? Because I kind of thought he was going to.
Um, this is we're talking about men and their mother. The little boys have a different connection with their mother than their dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a special relationship with your dad, but at some point, like there's kind of a one-upsmanship with stuff with your dad. You want to, be better than your dad at certain things. You want to, it's the relationship is different. Harming your mother is just it's just a different act. And so when I was watching, I was like, he's not gonna do that.
Well, when we saw this movie, Carrie Fisher had passed, if I'm
Yeah.
remembering correctly. So I kind of thought, man, if they're going to write her out, because at the time I didn't read spoilers, I had not read any, I didn't want to know anything, obviously. So I didn't know how much footage they had. I kept hearing and reading tidbits here and there. Oh, we've got enough for this film. Then I heard, well, no, they don't. So I'm like, hoy, how are they going to do this? I kind of thought that's what they were going to do. And I'm like, so let me ask you this. Let's say he does take his own mother out. He's not redeemable at that point, is he? There's no coming back from that, is there?
No, especially at that time when she had just passed. I think that's just too close to home for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can redeem him.
No. Yeah, you're right, because they wouldn't accept him. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's I'm glad they didn't go that route. But the route they went is a little interesting because she's floating through the vacuum of space and she uses the force to fly to a ship. Again, Phil, I'm taken out of this for a brief second. because I'm like, oh, okay, that's different. That's new. Um, what this do for you? Was this okay? Did it feel weird? What's your take on it?
Yeah, it was kind of Mary Poppinish of her, flying with the one hand forward and flying back into the ship. It just, I don't know, visually it just didn't look very good,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of what took me out of it. I don't really have a problem with Leia using the Force and being a trained Jedi, um, but I just think the way that they decided to reveal that she could use the Force now was kind of weird. I don't know. And I mean, again, I don't have a problem with her being a force user. Um, and I even like the idea that she would be the one to decide to train um, Rey later.
Hmm.
But it's just the way that they did this reveal was just kind of hokey.
Yeah, very much so. Very, very much so. Um, so Chewie is hungry, and he has roasted porg. So, uh, are the porgs the Ewoks of this Star Wars generation? You think?
Are they? I mean, they were super popular during
Yeah,
that when the movie came out. Like you would see those little porg plushes and like those little plastic porgs everywhere.
yeah.
Um, Maybe. I mean, they're definitely the cutesy thing of this generation.
I loved them. How'd you feel about them? Were they too much? I loved them actually.
No, I really liked them. I thought, Star Wars movies uh kind of need something like this because when you just look at what the franchise does and how it markets to kids in some way, I think it fits.
Yeah. Yeah, I was all about it. I really enjoyed it. The way that little one had its bottom lip like quit like turned up, all sad. He's getting ready to eat like one of its own species, one of its own kind, like a little cat or like a little dog frowning at him. That was awesome. I just thought it was, and those were real world effects. Were those CG? Because it felt like puppets to me.
I think they were CG.
Were they? Wow. I was thinking maybe it was a mix of both, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I was all about it. We see Luke on board the Falcon for the first time in years. Almost as cool as seeing Harrison Ford back on it in The Force Awakens. He takes the dice down, which become a major thing later, which, by the way, the dice had no bearing in the original trilogy at all. If anyone says it did, they're wrong. It was a concept that was heavily leaned on in Solo, and that's fine. But it's like this reverse engineering feel that we do sometimes in these universes where it's like, oh, we're going to go back and make this mean something. It's like, yeah, but it didn't mean anything. Well, it's going to mean something now. I didn't get too hung up on it because I know what they're trying to connect the dots. But um, he takes the dice, and that's fine. But R2 is there. He connects with R2 for the first time in years, and R2's giving him a piece of his mind. He says, I'm not coming back. Nothing can make me change my mind. And then R2 shows him the original Leia video where she's reaching out to Ben for help. And he says, that was a cheap move. And dude, I teared up when I first saw that. And when I rewatched this film, I kind of did again. What a moment that was. And it was the only thing that would have made him turn and change his mind.
Yeah. I thought that was also really well done. I thought that was a good way to convince him that he needed to train Ray. Um, I think it's one thing to step away from something and saying you don't want to have anything to do with it. But then, just being reminded of, who you were and the people that were in this with you and how it affected them. I just think it was a great scene.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. And it brought the kid in me out again for sure. He agrees to teach Ray and then says, I'm going to teach the ways of the Jedi and why they need to end. This is the second time he said that. We get the destruction of Leia's ship, Admiral Akbar, a long-standing character in the Star Wars universe since Return of the Jedi, I believe, is when we first saw him. I don't think we saw him in Empire, but I could be wrong. I think it's Jedi. Long-standing character in the Star Wars universe is gone, which is I actually really love that character. So he's gone, and basically, Phil, all the leadership is gone. Leia's unconscious, is what the explanation was. Vice Admiral Holdo, our first look at Laura Dern. She's in charge. They've got 400 resistance fighters left on 3 ships. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. And then we get what's come to be known as the OJ chase in space. Actually, it's not. I just call it that because it's a big game of keep away. Dude, this thing has gotten so much hate. Like, what are we doing? What's going on? I know they explained it, and I'm fine with it because it makes sense. They can track them through light speed, so that what's the point of jumping? And jumping takes fuel. And if they can track them, they'll just show up wherever they're at anyway. So if they can stay out of range, great. And plus, they still have their shields, which are obviously fully functional and fully operational. So it's kind of they've put themselves in sort of a weird, like a, what's the Star Trek thing? A Kobayashi Maru, I think. Like it's the unbeatable program or whatever. What's your take on this OJ chase in space, man?
I liked it. I think it was an interesting way to go away from the usual formula we've seen in Star Wars movies where, okay, well, let's just jump into light space to get away, and then, we'll stall and come up with a plan and then go back. And now it's like the villains were actually proactive. Like, no, we've seen the heroes do this tons of times. Let's figure out a way to follow them into light space.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like I said, it's gotten a lot of grief, a lot of hate. I never really gave it that much of a thought on there. In fact, after I saw the movie for the first time, I started reading all these reviews. Like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I'm like, is it that bad? I didn't think it was that bad. Like, again, I thought they explained it pretty darn well. I was okay with it. Holdo makes the great speech, man, about the downtrodden in the galaxy. They're the very last of the resistance, but the downtrodden in the galaxy, well, they know their symbol and they've put their hope in it. They are the spark that will light the fire that will restore the public. It's a bit wordy, but I totally get it. And Poe says that again later. Obviously, he has a problem with Holdo. He wants to know what's going on. And she really put Poe in his place. She says, I've dealt with plenty of trigger-happy flyboys like you. You're dangerous. And she's like, get off my bridge. It's like, dude, that was freaking great, man. I think with a character like Poe, the audience pretty much really likes now, Laura Dern's character had to hold her own. And I thought that was a great little scene between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, we see Leia be stern with him earlier, but on some level, she's still trying to teach him and give him room to develop into the role that she had initially promoted him to. But Holdo's like, look, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time for you to figure this out. I'm trying to survive. Mm-hmm. You're in the way.
Would it have been easier for her to just tell him what the plan was? I'm trying to think if we got an answer why she chose to not tell him personally. Why not just tell him?
Because I think part of Poe's story arc is that he needed to learn how to follow before he could learn how to lead. And I think being able to just trust his commanding officer was what cost them the ships and, of course, the rebels in them at the beginning of the movie. So I think him not just trusting her to have a plan was just silly on his part. And then on top of that, it goes back to why I think the other side quests with other characters was just so pointless.
Yeah, lots of stuff. And in fact, I'm rewatching the movie again right now, and I'm seeing a scene between those said characters. So, we're going to get there because we're almost there now. Finn is going to leave to find Rey, and this is where he meets Rose. She's crying. It was her sister that sacrificed herself during the bombing run. Great little tie back there. Great little callback. It was well done, I thought. Um, Basically, she tells Finn she's been like stunning or like tasing deserters for all day or whatever. But she's immediately starstruck by him and then figures out he's trying to leave. So she stuns him, won't let him leave. He tries to explain to her what's going on, that Rey has a beacon that's going to connect her back to them, but that if she comes, she's doomed along with the rest of them because the fleet is doomed. It's active tracking is how the First Order is tracking them through light speed. So this is where this thing begins with Rose and Finn. No disrespect to Kelly Tran's performance here, because I thought she did fine with what she had, but it kind of begs the question, Phil, was this character even needed in this story? Do you think she's valuable in the grand scheme of things?
I think she is. I think she's a good character. I think the way that they used her was interesting. I just think what they tried to do with that side quest just did not work. Um, I think the introduction to the character was actually really good. I enjoyed that scene a lot. Her saying that, she thinks that Finn's a hero and, gushing over him, and the whole time he's planning to leave. And then she goes into, I've been tasing deserters, and the whole time his bag is sitting in the pod.
Yeah.
And just the way that they filmed those scenes, where you can see it a little bit in the background, and then he's trying to stand in front of it so she can't see it. All of that stuff was really good.
I mean, did you see this thing becoming a love interest thing between the two of them?
No. Again, this is why there are so many smart things that they do with Finn's character. But because he never feels like a fully formed character, none of them really get a chance to grow into anything more. It's just like there's a bunch of ideas they've introduced, but none of them get payoff in a satisfying way. I really like the idea that Finn, who has been essentially enslaved for his entire life as a member of the stormtroopers, has never had freedom, and he's never been able to do anything that he did in the first movie. So, he gets out of these things, he discovers, what it's like to just do the right thing and to make his own choices, and, what it means to be, his own man. And, he gets the stuff with Rey where, of course, the first woman he interacts with, he is just smitten because, of course, he has never, had any other experiences with a woman. And so introducing another woman into the thing, it might into his experience, is not necessarily like making her the love interest, but I think just confusing him and going like, no, there's more than just this. I think that's an interesting idea, but the problem is we never got a payoff for it.
No, we don't. Yeah. It never goes anywhere, which is weird. Again, Phil, dangling plot lines in and
Yeah,
around the character of Finn. I don't get it.
and then they introduced another woman around him in the third movie.
Oh, they totally did. I forgot about that.
Yes, so they just never. I think there were ideas that they did here with Finn's character, and showing him more things, and showing him that he has more than one choice. And again, he just never essentially grows into a fully formed character because you don't give him a chance to make, make any of these choices or decide on anything. Like at the end of the trilogy, he's still a big question mark.
Yeah. It kind of feels like he's along for the ride. Like he had such a thing, such a mission in the Force Awakens, because he got Poe away from the First Order. They had captured him, and if not for Finn, Poe's probably going to be killed, executed. So he definitely made a difference. He was not Indiana Jones, in other words, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where nothing the character did impacted the events of the movie at all. The bad guy still got the Ark and still opened it. But you
Yeah,
can't say that about Finn, dude, because if not for Finn, Poe's dead in the first movie.
I really like the idea that this movie introduces. And I think it's one of those things where we look at stories and we see this one ongoing story where this person does the right thing, and that's it, and that makes them a hero forever. I
Yeah.
really like the idea in this movie that they introduce, okay, you can do something really great, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a hero. You just did the right thing in that instant. Continuing to do the right thing and continuing to grow into a good person is what makes you a hero. And it's the same thing with a villain. You could do something really, really bad because you think that, that's what you need to do in that moment, but that doesn't necessarily make you a monster. It's how you continue to grow after that.
Yeah. Yeah, not letting you get the easy way out. You got to do more than that for sure.
Yeah. And so
So,
I think that that's a part of, Finn's storyline. I think that's a part of Luke's storyline and Kylo's.
yeah, yeah, like you said, you can't just do the one thing. Like it's funny how everybody in the Force Awakens and this movie look at the original characters as legends. Or I didn't know they were real. That you mean he's real? And like they were myths to these kids. Like they just well, that's not real. That didn't happen. That's just been romanticized. It's kind of like they're like old gunslingers, like gunslingers from the 1800s showing up in the present, where it'd be like, what? I mean, that's how it's kind of got that feel to it, man. Where like their exploits are famous and they're legends, but it's well, these characters don't have the eyes of the original trilogy like fans do in the audience, so they don't see. They just know the stories, which is it's funny, man, because the new characters in this trilogy kind of represent the new audience, don't they? Like the new moviegoers.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think it's a smart way to go about this. And you could have easily taken Luke and had him have this big, massive, heroic moment like he had in The Mandalorian, where he comes in and with his lightsaber and he beats all of these stormtroopers and goes and has this like extended um, duel with Kylo Ren. But at the end of the day, this trilogy is not about him. Like
Yeah.
we've had all his adventures. It's time to move forward from him, and I think that that's part of why they used the character in the way that they did.
Yeah, because they're trying to start the next chapter, which won't start for another two movies or whatever they're going to do after Rise of Skywalker. So before we get to Canto Blight, kids, we've got this stuff happening between Kylo and Rey where they can see each other. It's really weird. He doesn't know where she is. He can only see her. And, she sees the caretakers. Got to mention the caretakers of the island because they're freaking great. And she keeps screwing things up and they keep having to fix it. It's like a bunch of ticked off maids. Like, keep kicking the covers in the floor and breaking the lamp, and they got to go fix everything and all this stuff. So, um, the stuff with Ray and Luke, the moment when she's on the rock sitting there, and this is a line that comes back. He says, "What do you know about the Force?" She says, "It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people, and makes things float." He says, "Impressive." Every word in that sentence was wrong. And so she sits on the rock. He says, "The Force is not about lifting rocks." He tells her to reach out, and she reaches out with her hand physically, which kind of, and he rolls his eyes like, "Oh my God. Dude, what do you chalk that up to? Like she's a kid?" It kind of felt like, I don't know, like she just wasn't on the same page. Did that take you out of this at all, or you just kind of attributed that to the naivete of the character?
I didn't take me out of it. I think it was playing off this idea that she was trying to do what she thinks a Jedi is. She was trying to mimic what
Mm,
you
yeah,
know she would think, as a kid growing up around the lore of a Jedi. And he's just looking at like, no, don't 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 try to pretend to be a Jedi. Be a Jedi.
right. I thought the back and forth between those two was pretty fun when he's got the grass and he's like touching her hand. You feel that? Boy, the force must be really strong with you. And she's getting all excited. And then he slaps her with it. That was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed that.
That was good. What's weird is that, he makes her focus and she immediately focuses and immediately starts seeing everything around her and sees the darkness, which completely freaks him out. and says, you saw the darkness and didn't even try to stop yourself. And that's when she realizes he's closed himself off from the Force. And Luke fires back with, I've only seen this much raw strength once before in Ben Solo. It didn't scare me enough before. It does now, which is really getting to the meat on the bone between these two. And I love that moment. The fact that she didn't turn away from it. That leads us to Canto Blight, your favorite part of the movie. So, is the whole Canto Blight, subplot, could the movie have just been the exact same without this? They did get the tracking shut down where the resistance could escape. But like, is that what it accomplished?
I just don't think the movie needed the Canto Black stuff. It's just it's not very good. I think what they're trying to do with that stuff is they're trying to introduce the idea of of a tweener, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to introduce this character that might do good things sometimes, but is also a swindler, and that's what we get in the DJ character. And if you look at it, Finn is so enamored with him at first because he's like, oh, he's so cool, he's so real. But to go back to wrestling, there's no such thing as a tweener, kids. No. This guy's just a bad guy. It just is what it is. And it's like, I think the whole point of that and the DJ character is to show Finn, like, you cannot straddle the fence. You have to make a choice. If you're going to be a part of the resistance, then be here. Don't be here because you feel like you have to be here. Don't make a choice and then feel like you can leave later and go off and do other things and come back. Be here.
Yeah. What's your take on the whole casino thing and the idea that, well, the First Order and the Resistance are getting their munitions from somewhere and all their gear and hardware and equipment and ships, and this is how they get it. And basically the same terrible rich people are bankrolling everything. This kind of started to feel like not so much of a space movie anymore. It started to feel very political and anti-government and stuff. And suddenly, I don't know if I want to say personal commentary was thrown into this, but what's your take on that? Did you need to know how they get their stuff? I don't know if I ever needed to know that, but now I know.
I on the surface, I think that it is kind of a throwaway scene, but I do think that it again is to throw this idea in there that just because you do good things on the surface, or because that you have, the trappings that people want, like wealth and all these other things, that doesn't make you necessarily a good person. You just, it depends on your actions. Like, your actions mean everything.
Right. Yeah, this didn't necessarily take me out. I've mentioned the moments that have, and I moved past those, and I don't recall there being anything else in this movie that really took me out. I just found it interesting to include that. So, yeah. I don't know, man. The creatures, the like the horses that they had, and there's a word for them, and I've got it somewhere here.
The other part with that scene, again, this is Finn's first time seeing anything outside of his bubble.
Very true.
And that's why I'm like, you're showing Finn because he's looking like, well, why don't I just go and, do and be here? He's looking at, oh, these people are wealthy. They're happy. They don't have to deal with war. And it's like, Rose shows him, like, everything has to do with the war. Mm-hmm. It just don't see it. And he was like, these people might look great to you, but they're also not good people.
Because he's been very sheltered in the First Order. He doesn't know about this. He doesn't know about the suffering until he's ordered to kill innocent women and children. Then he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. There was a scene wedged in here where he's talking. Ray is Luke is talking to Ray, and when he tells her that to say that if the Jedi dies, the Force dies, is vanity. And that all goes back to The Rock. But I like the idea. If this is where the character was going the whole time, I'm in. And I'm in because Look, the Jedi's didn't create the Force. It's always been there. They just found a way to tap into it and to use it, eh, not well as a weapon or as to get what they want, sure, whatever. But I do like that idea that the Force is always there, and this idea that if the Jedi dies, that it's over. No, that's crap. I do like that take on it, man. That makes sense to me.
Um, well, if you want to get even more philosophical with it, I think in some ways Luke started to understand what his father understood when he left the light side of the Force. That the dogma around the Jedi is not healthy. It's not true balance.
Mm. How is that though?
Because I mean, like he said, to just say that the dark side, I mean the light side is the only one that must exist, and the dark side is does not need to exist. Because the thing is because there needs to be balance, there one needs to exist for the other to exist. And the Jedi teaching tells you, you have to cut yourself from all of these things like worldly possessions and love and all these other things because you only have to be dedicated to this one thing. And it's just unhealthy. I mean, even if you look at Anakin's whole journey throughout the prequels and how he felt like he had to keep a part of his life secret in order to be a Jedi, it isn't healthy.
It's like becoming a priest or becoming a monk, telling a man to give up everything for a world of religion and prayer and service to God. Because, the whole Jedi Order, the thing's been compared to religion and spirituality for years since the original trilogy. So that makes sense that they're going that road.
Yeah, and I think that I I think in some ways um he was disappointed in himself because I think that he saw in himself what he was doing to Kylo, even though maybe he might not have tried to kill him.
Hmm.
But I think he saw in himself that he was judging Kylo in a way instead of trying to mentor him in the same way that the Jedi Council did with Anakin.
Yeah, there's some parallels. It's almost like this set of movies does a better job connecting to the prequels than the prequels did connecting to the original trilogy.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, he might not have made that connection himself, but I think as the audience, you can see the connection of him being so afraid of what Ben was becoming, and him, doing things out of fear instead of trying to help him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I mean, really, that was Anakin's downfall. It's partially his own arrogance, of course, but a part of his downfall is that the Jedi Council was so afraid of him going in that direction that they never really tried to um, guide him.
Yeah, they just said, "Well, we can't do it because he's already." Yeah. Ugh. They do come off like hypocrites, don't they?
Yeah, he's too far gone. We
Yeah.
we can't we can help him, and I think that that's part of. I think in those scenes with him and Kylo, it kind of felt like that same thing where it was just like you're too far gone. I can't help you, and that's not the Luke that we left the franchise with in Return of the Jedi. We left with a Luke that felt like even the darkest man has done horrible things could be redeemed.
Right. So, what do you think about the conversation between him and her? I think this takes place in the temple, I believe. And I love what he says to her. He says, "At the height of the Jedi's power, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out." And then she reminds him that, "Hey, you took Vader down." He says there's balance in the Force after, basically after Return of the Jedi is what he's getting at. There was balance in the Force. He saw Ben and thought he could train him. Leia trusted me with her son. He took Ben and a dozen students and began a training temple. He realized he was no match for the darkness rising in Ben. It was too late when he found out. He confronted Ben and Ben turned on him. He thought Leia was dead, he thought Luke was dead. Must have thought Luke was dead. The temple was burned down. He slaughtered his students and took off with a handful of others. Luke blamed himself and said it was hubris that did it. He was a legend and he was wrong. She says that he didn't fail Kylo. Kylo failed him, and she won't. Who do you think has got the, because they both make good points. Who's got the better argument here?
I think two things are true. I think in some ways that he did fail Kylo, and I think that it's different. There are differences in him just training some student that he did not know. This is his nephew, and I think it's different if you just train somebody and they end up going to the dark side and you lose them. I think there's so much that came with that because of his father's legacy, and what this did to Leia and Han. I feel like it's not just that he feels like he failed. I feel like he feels like he failed them. I feel like he feels like he failed to do essentially what his father left him to do. And that's to, not just bring balance to the force, but set in motion change.
Yeah, dude, I don't know where I stand on this, because I thought Luke made some great points. Like, look, we were in charge at one point. We were the Jedi, were the top dogs, and look what happened. We allowed this evil to rise. But part of that rise was that they didn't understand that, dude, it's almost like the old conversation of, do you leave the maniacal despot in power, the dictator in power, because you know that removing him is going to cause a far worse situation than what you would have if you just left him there. It's kind of that idea, like, well, the dark side of the force can't deal with it. It's this, it's that. But yeah, but if you take one of them out, they're going to get stronger. Is that what we're looking at here? Maybe.
Well, you got to look at why Sidious rose. Sidious rose because of their arrogance. They thought that they could not be beaten. They thought that nothing like that could happen under their noses. They just weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
And so I think he is right in that a lot of what happened to Sidious and Anakin was their fault.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. So we're getting back and forth here. We're getting some cut scenes. The medical ship is out of fuel and destroyed by the First Order. We see the pilot or the navigator, the captain, I guess, go down with the ship. We know that Finn and Rose are going to get off Canto Blight. They've met up with DJ. They escape. The Fathers are what these animals are called. Fathers, not horses. Space horses would have been more fun, but we're going with Fathers, kids. Rose and Finn are trapped. DJ is actually the guy that shows up, and we think it's his ship, but we should know it's not his ship because he's kind of a liar and a swindler and a cheat. So this is the moment later on here we finally get the scene where Luke connects to Leia. He knows that she's hurt. Kylo and Rey connect again, and he's all kinds of shirtless, and she like flat out draws attention to it. Like, can you put something on? And he just kind of looks at her. What a bizarre little moment that was when he turns around. He's got that blank expression. I mean, dude, I don't know. I don't know at this point if I'm even thinking romance between these two, or is it something more? What do you think he looks at her as? A possible student or a partner? I mean, he kind of tells us later, but what do you think he's really thinking here?
I think that he is trying to corrupt her. I think he's trying his best to corrupt her. I think that there is like weird sexual tension between them in that scene that is odd because it just seems like it comes out of nowhere. And I mean, I guess it was kind of there in the first movie, but just the way that it's done here is just so very awkward.
Yeah. And it's funny because she asks him he says, did Luke tell you the truth? He says, your parents are your greatest weakness. And then he tells the version of Luke coming in. And I got to admit, when he told that version, he's so good. He's so convincing that in the back of my head, I'm thinking, holy crap, did that happen? We haven't seen Luke in a long time. He's been by himself for a while. How do we know that he didn't go in there with the intention of killing him, which we get his version later, which is a scaled down version. But dude, once again, the dark side of the force has corrupted this kid to the point where he actually believes Luke had that wild look in his eyes. Credit to Mark Hamill, looked amazing in that scene where he came in there with murder in his heart. But to Ben, that's how Ben saw it. I thought that was such a nice flashback right there.
Yeah, I really like the addition of both of their tellings of the story because in both of their minds they think that they're right.
Yeah, yeah. Kylo tells her, and he said this before, he's going to say it again, let the past die, kill it if you have to. That's the only way you can become what you're meant to be. And this time Rey goes into this darkness, and it's this weird scene where she sees her reflection a whole bunch, and she sees shadows. She wants to see her parents. It's not too late, that kind of thing. And instead she just sees herself. And her and Luke end up having this fight, man. Like they just start trading blows with these staffs, and she basically demands to know what happened. So again, like you said, tells her his version, and then she tries to hand the saber like she did in the beginning of the movie. He's not going to take it because her thing is we can turn Ben. He can be turned. I've sensed it, and I'm like, oh, dude, we're going back to that Force Awakens stuff, Phil, where it's like we're trying to retread what the original trilogy did with Luke and Vader. Did you pick up on that? Did you feel like this was yet another retread?
Yes, but that's also why there's so many smart things that they do with this movie. So, just that line of let the past die, kill it if you have to. I think that is just such a smart metaphor for what this movie tries to do for the trilogy, and it is such a great metaphor for where Rey is. It's like she is so trapped in my parents left me here, and that's it. I don't know who I am because my parents never allowed me to, um, you know, figure out who I am. I don't know who I am, so I've never been able to. I'm solely defined by the moment that when my parents left me here. And his whole thing to her is whether he's right or wrong is you have to leave that in the past and move on and grow into the person you're supposed to be. Now in his mind, he's warping it and going, "Come join me." But there's a lot of truth to it because she's so stuck in that moment. It's like you have to get past that and move on.
Yeah, dude, I kind of swear it still just feels like that this whole universe just cuts its nose to spite its face. It's like Johnson and whoever else was in the the brain trust of where this movie was, where they wanted it to go. It just feels like maybe we could have gotten there without all this. I don't want to say talking down to original fans, but it kind of felt like preaching a little bit maybe at some points. Like
I can see that.
yeah.
I just think that I'm basing this mostly off of what the first movie was because the first movie was so much fan service. It was so much celebration and almost like this slavish attachment to what the original trilogy was. And the second movie is just like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing what that movie did.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, phew, not at all. That's for sure. And to be fair, I don't know if I wanted that kind of fan service in the first one. That's what we got. I think I might would have been okay with. I don't know. I was going to say I might would have been okay with if this had been the movie that followed Jedi, but I mean, I get why this would have been a major shock to the system. It was a shock to the system for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah,
But
I just don't think that it works as an opening for a trilogy.
yeah,
I think you bring people in with the stuff they missed, and you reintroduce all the stuff that they missed, and then you come in and do this.
yeah, yeah. Turn it on its ear again, for real. Um, Dude, the fact that Kylo and Ray had this connection, I hold and maintain. She was not supposed to be the Emperor's granddaughter. Spoiler alert, kids. She was not supposed to be the Emperor's granddaughter. I firmly hold to that. Whatever plan they had, they changed it. There is no chance and no way, in my opinion, these two could have this kind of connection unless they are related. Why did she not end up being Luke's daughter somehow? How did that not happen?
I don't know. It seems like it seems like that would make the most sense, like that they were related in some way. Even if she was Han's daughter. Um,
Right. Right.
it I don't know. I don't know why they didn't go that route. Maybe it just seemed too easy. I don't know.
I suppose. Hoy, it still boggles my mind how they have such a connection. Luke's going to burn down the temple. We get to see Yoda for the first time in a very long time. Yoda's all kinds of happy because he burned the friggin' temple down himself because he brought lightning down. He's pretty darn happy about it. And Luke's taking up for it. It's like, oh, the ancient Jedi texts, and he's like, read them. You have? Well, yeah, no, that kind of thing. That was pretty cool. But like Yoda's figured it out, man. Yoda again proves why he's the smartest guy in the room because he's already figured this stuff out years ago. Luke is still Luke, regardless of how old he is. He's still this guy. He still has ideals. He may be crazy old hermit dude, but like Yoda's so far past all that.
Yeah. And see, that's why I think that all of the stuff with him realizing some of the vanity behind the original teachings of the Jedi is him going back to, rediscover who the Jedi were, and, at some point probably understanding, like, no, this is what got us in trouble to begin with. This is how we lost the first time. And and getting Yoda in the scene that we get him in this scene, it kind of it confirms it. He's like, no, you got to leave that stuff in the past. Again,
Yeah.
kill the past. You don't need it. Like, move forward. And so I thought it was wild that he was able to summon lightning as a Force ghost. We've never seen Force ghosts actually interact with anything.
And made physical contact with Luke because he was hitting him with his cane.
Yes, he could actually become like corporeal.
Wow.
Like, we've never seen that before.
Wow. Like, I don't know. Which begs the question: how come Ben didn't help Luke on Hoth and was freezing to death? I'm just saying. Let me drag you to some shelter, Luke, since I can do that. I don't know. It's weird. But I guess if Yoda's the most powerful Jedi of all time, is he the most powerful Jedi of all time? Is that what we've established?
He probably is. I mean, at least in the movie universe.
Yeah. Well, we go through a few different things here. DJ wants a deposit for the job. Rose gives him the necklace, which half of it her sister wore. Rose's thing is, we need this to work. I don't care what it takes. First order destroyed all the ships. The last one is the main cruiser. Their fuel reserve is critical. So the big bad's almost caught up to them, kids. It's not going to be good for the resistance here. Rey decides to go see Kylo as Luke went to see Vader. I'm sorry, it's how I feel. I'm going to turn him. So she's going to go do that, tells Chewie the plan, the rendezvous point, and all this stuff. And she lands inside the Star Destroyer. Kylo's waiting on her. So Poe takes this plan that they did for the Canto Blythe thing, which was brilliant and didn't need to happen. Tells Holdo about it. She's like, no. He pulls a mutiny on her. Did you see the mutiny coming on this?
No.
He's a pilot, for God. Does he even have a rank?
He did. He got demoted. Remember, he got demoted early in the movie.
That's right. I forgot. Crazy. Yeah, this pilot pulls a mutiny. So, yeah. So, let's see. Rey's trying to talk some sense into Ben. He says, I see you turning. And he's like, no, you're going to turn. So we're doing this back and forth thing. So we get to see Snoke again, and he is all kinds of happy. And it's funny because he mentions a line from the Bible, and they twist it a little bit. There's a line from the Bible that says, well done, thy good and faithful servant. And in this movie, they says, well done, my good and faithful apprentice. My faith in you is restored. So, man, so we find out that Holdo the whole time was going to take them to Crate, which is an old rebel base, and it's heavily armored. They're loading the rest of the resistance on the transports to get them there. So it turns out she's not so crazy after all. She did have a plan. And Leia's comes back, blows the door down, which was all kinds of awesome. Leia and Holdo have a past. They've known each other for a long time. And then we get back to the chamber room here, and Rey is face to face with Snoke. This stuff with Snoke is freaking awesome, but he's essentially in full control. He's showing her what's happening to her friends, and it just reminds me of the Emperor. Your friends on board the Sanctuary Moon are walking into a trap. And I'm like, oh, we're doing this again. That's fine. I'm trying to get too hung up on it. Trust me. But it's this idea, Phil, of, hey, you don't have the answers. We've already won. See, all hope is lost. Why didn't he try to turn her here? Because he's just going to kill her. Is there a moment when he's going to turn her? Because I think maybe he offered it to her one time and she said no. Oh, I'm going to just kill you then. He didn't even try very hard, did he?
Well, I mean, I think he had thought he won. I mean,
Yeah.
he felt like the rebels were losing. They were basically going to die. He has essentially the Last Jedi, and his apprentice is already on his side. So he thinks that he's won. But again, that's what makes this movie so smart, because it's basing so much they do off of things we've already seen, and they're not doing it in a fan service way to go, okay, we're gonna just do the same thing. It's luring you in to go, okay, well, I've seen this before, so I know that she's just gonna save the day and she's gonna get away. Nope, Kylo's just gonna kill him.
Right. Oh. So did you see this coming where he...
No, not at all.
It was crazy, right?
And I actually really liked how they did it. I liked how she tried to pull the lightsaber away, and then it goes around, and he pulls it back to himself, and then Kylo ends up using it to kill her. Will kill Snoke. It's just really smartly done, and she ends up holding his lightsaber, and he has Luke's. It's just very smart, because you've already set up the duality of, is she going to turn or is he going to turn?
I mean, at that point, I thought he was turning. I thought, well, he's turned the corner. He's going to turn.
But again, that's so smart, because we've seen it. So it's like, oh, well, she convinced them. That's what happened, right? No.
Yeah.
And that scene with them fighting the Snoke's men in his throne room is so great.
So great.
Those fights are so good. All action in that stuff just is really, really well done. I feel like they handled the lightsaber stuff in those scenes different than we've seen it in any Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that that's part of what makes this movie so good, in my opinion, is because there's so much stuff that we've just never seen before, and it makes it, distinct.
Very creative, very new, very original ways to use the sabers, which makes perfect sense the way they did it too. All of it did. The fight choreography can't be bragged about enough in this movie, kids. If we've not put that point across, we should, because it was very good, I thought. So listen, all right, we're back to the crate thing and the Canto Blight stuff. If DJ betrayed them and now they know about the transports, what was the point of the Canto Blight thing? Didn't it make things worse for them?
Again, the Canto Blight stuff was pointless, but what they're trying to do with the DJ character is show the audience and Finn at the same time that sometimes someone is just a bad person. Like, they might have, they might do something good once or twice and they might help you out, but sometimes deep down they're just a bad person. And I think Finn needed to understand that, to go, I might have thoughts of running away. I might have thoughts of doing this other thing, but I'm not like you.
Yeah, and it's funny because DJ basically tells him it's just business, and then Finn tells him, I can't remember the line, basically like, you're wrong or something, and he's like, maybe? And he just leaves it at that.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of his character, is just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
and I think that's Finn's plot line here, is he's supposed to care. He's supposed to be the guy that knows right from wrong, because that's already been established in the first movie.
Yeah.
He might, do things that appear selfish, but he's not DJ. He's a Lando-esque character. And I
Right.
think that's the other part that they're trying to riff off here, that we've seen other characters do this and then end up turning.
Right.
And that is a direct parallel to what we get with Kylo later, because it's like he seemingly turned, and we're supposed to begin to believe at the end of the movie is that no, sometimes someone is just a bad person,
Right.
and maybe Kylo cannot be turned.
I will say that the scene that we're coming up on, in my opinion, is Adam Driver's best moment in this entire trilogy. But when she's like, "Well, come on, we're going to help. We're going to help transports. We're going to do this thing. You're with me. Let's do this." And he just stops, and she's like, "Ben," and he's like, "It's time. Let all things die. Snoke, Skywalker, the Sith, the Jedi, the Rebels. Let it all die. I want you to join me." And dude, Daisy Ridley has a great moment where she doesn't say a thing. She just has this look in her eyes like, "Oh crap, you know, I can't believe we did all that, and you're still hung up on this." Like, what a great moment, man. And he says, and I bragged on this in Force Awakens. I'll do it again here. Do you want to know the truth, or have you always known? Your parents, they were nobody. Filthy junk traders, sold you off for drinking money, dead in a pauper's grave on the Jakku Desert. You have no place in this story. You come from nothing. You're nothing, but not to me. And dude, in that moment, I think that's the best delivered line he's had. I thought he was freaking phenomenal. And dude, how do you not accept it if you're her? The way he delivers that line, you're nothing. You're nothing, but
But
not
again,
to
that's
me.
why this movie, in my mind, it has moments of brilliance. And this scene, they built up this scene the entire movie because they're basing it off things we had already seen, and we're thinking, okay, they've had this connection all movie. They're gonna end up together and they're gonna leave together. They've won. And he's like, no, I don't want that. I never wanted that.
Mm,
And it's just like, this is who I am. It's basically what he's been trying to tell us since the first movie when Han tried to turn him. And he's basically telling Han, like, no, this is who I am now. And he's doing the same thing with Rey in this moment. Like, I'm not turning. It doesn't matter what Snoke wanted. I didn't want what Snoke wanted or anybody wanted. I want to be my own man.
right.
And he was like, essentially telling her the same thing, that that's what you should want too. I want that for you. You don't have to do what they want you to do.
Is there a way that part three could have worked had she turned and went with him? Or there would have been nobody to fight them then, right? Unless it's Finn. And then Finn would have had to have a major, major story arc in part three.
Oh, that would have been a very interesting plot twist at the end if she leaves and Finn runs in to save her and she just looks at him and still leaves.
Oh, yeah. And then
Yeah,
Leia trains Finn.
yeah, that would have been very interesting.
Dude.
But yeah, I just thought this scene was really, really good. I just think him using her parents against her because he knows that she is just so traumatized by that, and him going like, no, they don't understand you, but I do. That's
Mhm.
the ultimate. That's the ultimate evil bad guy thing to do to manipulate somebody. No,
Yeah.
they don't get you, but I do. Come with me.
That's the devil on your shoulder, man, telling you, nah, don't worry about it. I got you. Yeah. Um, bunch of explosions and blasts and stuff happens here. Basically, Finn and Rose, Phasma finally gets her, meets her end here on the ship, and Finn and Rose are ultimately rescued by Chewie. The whole thing comes down, goes up in a blaze of glory, I guess you could say. Because Holdo had turned the cruiser around and goes into light speed. Dude, that moment when she goes through the Star Destroyer is freaking great. How there's no sound and you just see the ships blowing up in space.
That scene in the
Oh,
theater looked amazing.
yes.
It's probably one of the best scenes in the movie. It looks so cool the way that they edited, and they had that happening at the same time as they were trying to pull the lightsaber, and she was trying to take Luke's lightsaber back, and in this tug of war, and all these other things are happening at the same time. So then when she goes through the ships and the lightsaber splits at the same time, it's just so well done.
Yeah. That's great stuff, man. And then later we see that Hux comes in and Kylo's out, and he wakes up and we think that Hux is going to kill him. It's close, right? Because they've never liked
this
each other.
this is another thing that Hux does so well in this movie. When he's laying on the ground after the explosion, he walks in and he just like subtly moves his coat back to go for his blaster, and he just immediately wakes up and then he acts like he wasn't doing it. It's just so good.
It's great. I loved it. Man, I really wanted Hux to be alive and be well. I mean, not well, but I just loved this character so much. And he says, "What happened here?" And he lies because, Ben's a bad guy. And he says, Rey murdered Snoke. The girl murdered Snoke. And he's like, "I know where she's at. Let's go. Let's finish this." He goes, "Who do you think you're talking to? The Supreme Leader is dead. We have no leader." And then he force chokes him and says, "The Supreme Leader is dead. Long live the Supreme Leader." So now Kylo Ren is this weird job title that didn't exist before, but now it does. He's the Supreme Leader.
Well,
yes.
And see, what also makes this so good is that you spend the first two movies with this allusion to Darth Vader and him being under the thumb of this guy. And Kylo immediately in this movie, in a very badass way, by the way, it's just like, I answer to nobody.
Yeah.
You guys answer to me. I loved it.
Yeah, because we didn't see it coming. And I mean, honestly, does he even want to be Supreme Leader at this point? Like,
no, I think that this is what he feels like he has to do.
Right. Yeah, because
that's what just makes him so interesting, is that he's like, he spent so much time trying to be either Vader or be what Snoke wanted, or, even before that, trying to be what Luke wanted and trained to be a Jedi. And he's just like, I've just had enough of all of it. I just want to be who I want to be.
So what do you think he wants to be? Does he want to conquer and dominate? Does he power? Is that what what does he really want?
I think in the moments of Luke coming to his bedside, and because it's not just that he confronted him with what he felt like he believed about the dark side. He comes with his lightsaber out. And in his mind, he thinks that Luke tried to kill him, so he didn't have any choice but to run. And I think in his mind is, if that's what my uncle sees me as a monster, then that's what I am.
Right.
And I think his entire character arc from then on is him trying to prove that that is what I am.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's him just trying to find himself as a whole story in and of itself. This is kind of like, this whole trilogy is kind of like, who am I and where am I supposed to be and what's my place in the universe?
Yeah, because I don't think that he really wants to. I don't think he wants like conquest of the galaxy. I think that he is lashing out because he feels that he was rejected by the Jedi, which is ultimately what happened to Anakin.
Yeah. Yeah, good call. Good point. Crate is maybe one of the most visually stunning landscapes that we have ever seen in the Star Wars universe. And I'd hold it up next to anything we've seen so far. The idea of the white and its salt, and there's red underneath, dude, visually stunning. It's so good. I love it.
Well, I was confused. Is the red under it sand, or is the red the sand? Is the salt? Because it seems like the white over it is snow, and then the red is the salt from the mines.
See, I thought, because at one point one of the resistance fighters puts his hand down and touches it and puts it to his mouth, it says salt. And I think it's the white stuff.
Yeah, because I was just confused because you've got those other like icy coyote things that are running around.
Very true. They call them the crystal critters.
Yeah, so I assumed that, it was like a snow planet. I don't know. I was probably wrong.
Well, dude, on this planet, we get the gorilla walkers. And when you look at the Imperial walkers from the original movies, they do look like gorillas walking. And it's so perfect the way they did this for this film. There's a lot of things they do with the tech that I'm all about, the updates and stuff. Dude, I love the gorilla walkers. What just aesthetically, amazing thing to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the scene of them coming in, and I like them, running the rebels into this corner, and then them bringing out all of their biggest tech to just kill this small this
Yeah,
small group of resistance. It's
yeah,
such overkill, but it's so visually appealing.
yeah. Well, we get the Falcon back, which is always good to have the Falcon. We got Chewie and Rey's on board the ship with a bunch of porgs as well who stowed away. They were building nests in earlier in the film. And of course, because we always have to keep referring to the Millennium Falcon as that piece of junk, Kylo says, "Blow that piece of junk out of the sky." That was a nice touch. There is some subtle fan service inserted into this film.
I love the entendre there of him winking to the audience, but also him recognizing that is my dad's ship. Destroy it.
Right. Very well done. Yeah, good call. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. So they've got this cannon. And I'm like, there's a great piece of tech if they'd had this thing years ago. They could have done some major damage on Hoth and all kinds of other different places. This thing's pretty cool, man. And basically, this is a suicide mission now because they're picking off these resistance fighters one by one. And Finn decides, I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to do the self-sacrifice thing, fly right down the throat of this cannon. Rose stops him, and basically she runs her ship into his, and no one's dead, which, okay. What if that had backfired, Phil, and she killed both of them? That would have sucked.
um. So this is such an interesting scene for me because we've seen the progress of where Finn was at from the first movie and where he starts in this movie, and him trying to run away constantly or trying to just essentially protect Rey. It's not even about doing the right thing for the rebels. It's just about, well, how does this affect Rey?
Yeah.
And so he finally has this, moment where he's like, I have to do the right thing, and I'm a part of the Rebel Alliance, so I have to sacrifice myself to save them. And in some ways, it would have been a fitting end to his character. Um, and that's why I was so confused why Rose ends up slamming the ship into him, because I'm like, okay, why set up that storyline and that story beat and then just have her go, no, I'm not going to let you do that.
Right. Man, that's
Um,
is it too much too soon for this character? Like he went from that to this that quick?
I don't think that it is, because I think if he had done that in the very first movie, maybe. But we went through everything he went through in the first movie, and everything that he learned, and everything he was experienced. He was exposed to in this movie to get him to that point. Because really, he had forgotten all about Rey in that moment. He was like, "I can't let you kill the rebels. I have to save them." It wasn't about Rey. It wasn't about anything else. It wasn't about, you know, Poe or any other relationships he's made. It just was for the greater good.
Yeah, and I do like the line that she gives him here, when she says that we don't. This is how we win, uh, not by fighting what we hate, by saving what we love, and then kisses him, and he's kind of shocked by this, and then it looks like she dies, and I thought she was dead, man. I thought that was the end of her.
um, I really like that line too, and I think that I even though I think that story beat is kind of confusing of setting him up to do the sacrifice, and then she stop and having her stop him. I do like that she was like, no, we're not like them. Like they see life as invaluable. I mean, as unvaluable. We don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And the kiss is it's so random. It feels tacked on in some ways, but at the same time, I also feel like it's partially there to set up this dynamic with Finn that he's made up his mind that this is what the world is based off of a handful of experiences in the first movie, and you're now showing him that there's more than that. There's a whole world around you that is not just that. And I like that, but again, we don't get a payoff to it. It's just I don't know. It just never goes back to it.
And wouldn't she have gotten? Wouldn't we have gotten the same thing had she just like put her hand on the side of his face and then passed out? Wouldn't that have been the same oomph as a kiss, or maybe better because it's more subtle?
I think it would have, but I think they were also trying to set up this love triangle, and that's fine. The love triangle thing did not bother me, but it was just never addressed again.
Yeah, I'm with you. It feels like it didn't fit. Um, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of felt like out of the blue. It's kind of like she's maybe a little bit farther along in this than maybe he is because I think he's still got emotions for Ray at this point. So, yeah, like you said, it's going to be explored later for sure. So, all right. So, this is leading to me, which is one of the best scenes in any Star Wars movie ever. And I'm going to stick to this till the end. It looks like our heroes are at the end. Like there's no coming back from this. The First Order has them cornered. This is the end. And then who shows up? But Cowboy himself, Luke Skywalker's there. Um, dude. He talks to Leia first, which very much had to happen, and she uses a line on him that she used with Han because Han had said you changed your hair in the Force Awakens, and so when she sees Luke, she says, "I know what you're going to say. I changed my hair." He says, "It's nice that way," and then he apologizes to her, and she says, "I know you're sorry. I'm just glad you're here." At the end, and he says, "I came to face him, and I can't save him." And so she agrees for the first time ever. I held out hope for so long. I know my son's gone. He says, no one's ever really gone. And then he holds her hand and gives her the dice from the Falcon, kisses her forehead. Then 3PO stands there and says, Moss, look, and he winks at him, which is freaking awesome. I loved it. The Resistance is looking back, standing there like, it's Elvis. What's going on? This is crazy. Very, very starstruck. And then Ben orders the walkers to stop because he sees Luke and he says, I want every gun we have to fire on that man. They let loose and feel it's a freaking massacre. He's yelling more and more and more. And then Huck says, that's enough. He goes, do you think you got him? Great line. And then the smoke clears. At that moment, did you know that, be honest, did you know he wasn't even really there?
No, I did not. I figured that he just did something cool with the Force to protect himself from all that
Yes.
laser.
Yes. Dude, I think it's one of the best moments in any Star Wars movie. And for me personally, one of the best moments I've ever seen in a film to begin with. I loved it. What do you think about this?
I thought it was such a very good payoff for everything, just for everything that we got in the first movie, for the way that we started with Luke and him finally deciding to join the conflict. I think having him, I think having him be reluctant for that long, I think getting that scene made it worth it. Um, and just I don't think that they could have done that scene any better. Having Kylo, because this is essentially the first time he's seen Luke since he ran away. I'm assuming.
I think so.
And he's just like, no, I'm in control now. Destroy him. And he's just destroying him in the most, ridiculous tantrum filled way, of course, because it's Kylo. And then him looking like it didn't work. And that leads to their like one-on-one duel. And that is just, again, it's just so good. the everything they do with the scene of him never raising his lightsaber and just dodging him the entire time is just so great.
So awesome. It's so good. And I want to see that scene when he comes out, paired off with Jay's "Dirt Off Your Shoulder." I just want to see that. Someone needs to make that because it's awesome. I just, I'm with you. I think it's a great payoff. And I've said this before and I'll repeat it again. I had a conversation with about this movie with someone the other day. And I was like, look, the Jedi are not, all right. Luke gets it now. He understands. He may have always gotten this part. The Jedi were not supposed to be warriors first. The original intent of this thing was we're not warriors first, we're protectors first. We use the Force. We don't use it against people. We tap into it when we need to.
Yeah.
And he's there to protect. He's not there to attack. That they are not, the Jedi are not supposed to be a shoot first, ask questions later order. And
Yes.
plus, Phil, their whole shtick is sleight of hand, illusion, Jedi mind tricks. These are not the droids you're looking for. He tries to do it on Jabba. He can't do it. And that's what the Jedi are, is sleight of hand. I thought because of that, this was perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, there's two things. I mean, the third act of this movie is just very, very good. I mean, say what you want about the middle and all of the side quests in the middle, but the third act is just very, very good. I think, like you said with the Rose line, everything that Luke does is a play off of that line. Him playing off the line from the beginning where he said, "What did you think? I was just going to show up with a lightsaber and fight everyone?"
Yes. So good. So good. I loved it so much. And like I said, it fits. And I love that it fits. And I love that even in moments when I was taken out of this film, I love that this brought it all home. And uh, I just think everything was awesome. I can gush about this scene all day, and it'll never be enough because I just love it so much. It's so great. I love their dialogue in this. Um, and basically, Ben is digging his boots into the salt, and he says, he says, "I failed you, Ben. I'm sorry." He says, "I'm sure you are." He says, "The resistance is dead. The war is over. When I kill you, I would have killed the last Jedi." And Luke says, "Amazing. Every word of the sentence that you just said is wrong. The rebellion is reborn today. The war is just beginning, and I will not be the last Jedi." And you cut to Rey, who's holding up the rocks. And again, Phil, that's a callback to when Luke was telling her the Force is not about, holding up rocks. And there she's doing it.
Yes.
So good. So good. And then, Luke turns off his saber. And dude, this whole idea of he's not physically there, so it's not as important. He ducked every single charge, but every duck and every, avoiding Ben's charges is part of him projecting himself there to begin with. So every time he moves that image, it's taking life out of him, which, in my opinion, had Luke been there physically, I don't know if he would have won the battle, but I think he would have fared far better than what anybody would have gave him credit for being the age he's at that point in time.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, and I mean, it's just so many things he did. To go back to what I said earlier in this episode of him putting his lightsaber down and allowing Kylo to essentially strike him down like Obi-Wan did.
Yep.
And again, that's a tie back to Obi-Wan's relationship with Anakin and his relationship with Ben. And him realizing he's not there. It's just everything. I mean, him realizing that he had let his anger basically cost him everything and let the rebels escape because he just was so insistent on revenge that he just missed it. I think if he had paid attention sooner, he would have realized Luke wasn't there a long time ago.
Yeah. Because his judgment's so clouded for sure. Dude, the line that Luke gives him, "See you around, kid." Dude, I howled in the theater. I was clapping my hands because it's the Han's line, dude. It's perfect.
It's the Han's line, and then um, he goes and he picks up the dice, and the dice isn't really there.
Yeah.
And him realizing earlier is it again a callback to if you strike me down, you'll never forget me, and just so good. All of that stuff is just so good.
It's great stuff, man. And then, of course, it's taken too much out of Luke. He dies from all this. Rey feels it, which again is crazy. Leia feels it as well. And basically, by the time Ben and the First Order march in there, the resistance is gone. Hux actually looks pretty darn happy with himself. Like, you screwed up again, kid. Like, he should want them dead too, but it's more important to him to see, you know, freaking Ben falling on his hind end here, which is what he gets. And Rey sees Ben again, that little thing they do, and they're on board the Falcon. They fly off. 3PO and R2 are reunited. We didn't mention 3PO's red arm is gone. I kind of like that. We never really got a story there. Poe and Rey meet for the first time. Were you aware of the fact that Poe had not met Rey yet?
Yeah, I was surprised by that at the time, but it made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean just the build up of finally getting Rey and Finn together after the entire movie. I thought that was also a really good payoff. And just that confusion in his face as he was hugging her about everything he had experienced throughout the entire movie, including the stuff with Rose. It just was a really, really good payoff.
Yeah.
Because again, at the beginning of the movie, all he cared about was reuniting with her. And now it's just like he just was confused. He didn't know what to think. And that was such a good place to leave this movie, and to not pay off on it was just, I don't know, man. It just did not make any sense.
Yeah. No. And she sees him with Rose from a distance and she's smiling. Like she's okay with that. I'm thinking, okay, sure. I don't know if I'm okay with that, but yeah, I mean, I didn't get too hung up on that, but Rey's a good person. I think is the end of this story is that Rey's a really good person. Poe's made a lot of mistakes. Finn was part of the First Order for God's sake. He's trying to redeem himself now. Rey's just a really good freaking person. Like naive, but man, as good as Luke was in the beginning,
Yeah, I think that you could take away that what trauma did to Luke, and it made him go away and go into a hole and give up on everything, and what trauma did to Kylo, and it made him go off and become, this dark shell of himself. And even when Kylo tried to show her worst trauma to her and manipulate her with it, she didn't go for it.
Yeah, it didn't work. I mean, she's made us some strong stuff. We don't find out to the third movie what she's made of. Hui. So I got thoughts on that storyline. Let me tell you, man. But we'll get there. So, what do you think? Because a lot's been said about a lot of this movie here in particular, but especially the last scene. We go back to Canto Blight with the slave kids, and they're acting out the showdown. And it's the whole idea of what Holdo said earlier in the film that the galaxy, they're committed to this. They know the symbol, they know the fight, and they're in it. They're in it with us. They're a part of this as well. So the showdown with Luke and the First Order has basically become a legend, and this kid is acting it out. Like word has spread that Luke was there. Luke was there and took every shot the First Order had, and he didn't get killed. Like to these stories that are now going to become urban legends, like what Rey and Finn or Rey and Poe grew up hearing. This is now going to become a legend, and in this version of the legend, he was there, and the First Order couldn't take him down. Like if that's the only thing that scene happened for, that's awesome because it's going to inspire people for generations to come.
Yeah, I think Luke coming back in the way that he came back was to inspire a new generation. And I think that that's part of why that scene is so well done. But again, it's such great commentary on the franchise as a whole, because they're essentially saying in that scene, in my interpretation, is, the legend and the mythos that exists around Star Wars cannot be destroyed. Mm-hmm. It always exists because we saw it when we were kids. We are in a movie theater as adults watching this movie because of the legend that we know that already exists. And so it doesn't matter what we do in this movie and what we do new. That story will always be there, and that will always inspire people to make new stories.
Yeah. Even in the very end, they're still, like breaking the fourth wall on you. Whether you realize they're doing it or not, they're doing it like crazy. Yeah. I mean, I love this scene, actually. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I really enjoy the message of the movie a lot. I really enjoy a lot of what's in the movie. There are parts of it, like I said, that don't work well, that didn't need to be there, that probably could have been left on the cutting room floor. Mm-hmm. But I think for the most part that this is a good movie.
Yeah, I liked it a lot better than a lot of other people did. And honestly, I'm in that position where I can see, as a fan of the original trilogy and growing up with it and saw all three original films in the theater, I can totally get why people are upset. But I also totally get that, look, if we're going to keep this thing going, we have to go in different directions. If we recycle A New Hope every single movie, people are going to eventually start walking away. And we can't have that because we need to still keep making toys and making money. It is a business after all. So if we're going to take different directions, we have to have new characters with different motivations and take this thing into different corners of the universe. So I get both sides of this. And if this movie was supposed to do that, I think it was. It's not my favorite. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. But I can appreciate what they tried to do here, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, kids, there's The Last Jedi for you. And never you fear, because we're going to tackle everybody's favorite. If you thought this was your favorite, The Rise of Skywalker, it's like I'm setting it up to not be good. That's not cool. Who am I to do that? We're going to tackle The Rise of Skywalker. Never you fear, folks. So we'll see what everybody thinks about that one. But in the meantime, Phil, let's take this thing home, my friend. Give me your last word on the Last Jedi.
I think The Last Jedi is going to go down as possibly the most polarizing Star Wars movie of all time. But I think that there are good things here. And I think that it is probably, in my opinion, the best movie of the sequel franchise.
I know you stick to those. You stick to those guns. I don't know if the first one is. I don't know if I can say I have a favorite of this trilogy, to be quite honest with you. But if I'm nailed down, I'll say The Force Awakens, maybe. But I don't even know if I can stick to that. This is the most daring. That's for sure. And again, I'll give it to them that they are trying something and going in different directions. And again, I can respect that and appreciate it. But I'm with you and what you said in your opening here, that it's going to be probably the most polarizing Star Wars film. I can totally agree with that for sure. But we got one more film in the trilogy, kids, and we'll get there eventually. And a whole lot of Star Wars stuff to talk about after the fact. So, yes, there you go, kids, Last Jedi. And, yeah, whether it's your favorite or you hate it or whatever, you can't deny that it's definitely made an impact, long-lasting at that. Whether or not you like it is totally up to you. And that is The Last Jedi. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.